यहाँहरू सबैलाई आजका कार्यक्रममा स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छु म। आज हामी फेरि पनि हरेक वर्ष हामीले निकाल्ने भुटानको मानव अधिकार रिपोर्टको विषयमा चर्चा गर्न आइपुगेका छौँ। I would like to welcome everyone present here, and then our audience who are watching us on our Bhutan Watch Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Let me start introducing our guest today, Ram Karki from Hague in Netherlands, who has been monitoring Bhutan's human rights situation for a long time and campaigning for the release of political prisoners. And Gopal Krishna Sivakoti from Nepal, chairman of the Inherent International, who has championed in Nepal's human rights monitoring and advocacy for more than 3-4 decades, I believe. So we have got two guests today, and we'll be talking throughout about the human rights practices in Bhutan and then the monitoring ways. We'll touch base about UPR session, Universal Periodic Review of Bhutan's, that was concluded back in 2024. I will start with Ram Karki to give a brief introduction about our human rights reporting and our, reports, and then our, way of dealing with human rights in Bhutan.
Thank you, Indra, for giving me this opportunity to speak today at the launch of Bhutan Watch 2025 Human Rights Report. I found this report very timely and well-researched. I would like to focus my conversation on issues affecting Bhutanese of Nepali origin and their current situation. Since this report mainly covers events from 2023 and 24, there are several serious and ongoing human rights violations not included here, but I feel must be highlighted today. The first, Bhutan continues to hold at least 35 political prisoners. We have the detail of 32 only. Many for over 30 years, mostly because they peacefully advocated for democracy and minority rights in the 90s. The Bhutanese government denies these people as political prisoners. Instead, they call these people as criminal sentenced by the court. But multiple UN bodies like the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and other special procedure experts have repeatedly raised this issue with Bhutan. Sadly, Bhutan has never taken this concern seriously. They treat the whole matter as minor and insignificant, which clearly shows they have little respect for the rights of their own people. Just recently, experts from UN Human Rights Council and politicians from the European Union strongly condemned Bhutan's prison conditions and continued detention of these political prisoners. But despite all this international pressure, Bhutan has refused to change course. Bhutan also keep arresting people who think differently. For example, in 2024, Mr. Pradhan, a restaurant owner in Gedu, was sentenced to 10 years in prison just because he spoke about being forced to hang a photo of King on his restaurant wall in front of his Indian guest. This kind of repression shows the government's zero tolerance for any form of dissent. Another serious issue is the forced eviction of about 240 Nepali-speaking households in June 2025. The last date is the end of June, from land allocated for the Galipu Mindfulness City Airport project. These families were evicted within a month and given only minimal monthly rent assistance. Despite earlier promises, they were not compensated for their land. Instead, their displacement was framed as a symbolic contribution to national development, with no legal ways to challenge this decision. What worse is the cultural and ethnic discrimination they face. The Bhutanese concept of Chawasum, which demand loyalty to the king, people, and the nation, is used to silence criticism, especially from Nepali-speaking communities. Local leaders told these families, "This is His Majesty's order. Everyone must obey." No parliamentarian, even those representing the region, stood for them. This is very different from how Drukpa families displaced by the Paro airport expansion were treated. They received land compensation and parliamentary support. This shows clear ethnic bias. In addition, Bhutan is erasing the cultural, historical, and religious heritage of the original inhabitants of the GMC region. They are rapidly constructing Buddhist stupas, but neglecting Hindu temples and cultural sites important to the Nepali speaking community, who are majority in the region. This selective cultural promotion marginalizes these communities further. The land forcefully taken from exiled Bhutanese families must be returned or properly compensated. Otherwise, the GMC project stands as stolen land, deepening injustice. Bhutan has also continued to deport Bhutanese refugees who were resettled abroad, including from the United States, sending back to Nepal. This disturbs families and violates their rights. Uh, we urgently call for the dignified repatriation of those willing to return and for those uh, Bhutanese holding passports to be allowed to visit the families as tourists in Bhutan. During its 2024 Universal Periodic Review at the UN Human Rights Council, Bhutan rejected key recommendations such as releasing political prisoners, revealing the fate of disappeared persons, refugee repatriation, ratifying core human rights treaties, and establishing an independent human rights commission. This shows Bhutan's clear resistance to international human rights accountability. These actions violate many major international laws and treaties, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and other UDSR articles. In conclusion, what we see in Bhutan is a deepening entrenched pattern of repression, discrimination, and denial of basic rights. This report is a call for the international community to take urgent action. Human dignity, the rule of law, and equal rights must be restored for all Bhutanese citizens and displaced communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram Karki, for that intro. I would now go back to Gopal Krishna Silvati to quickly understand his perspective on current assessment of Bhutan's human rights situations, and then comparing with that situation with other countries in the neighboring regions.
Thank you and namaste, Indraji and the entire audience. First of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, to give a quick reflection with regards to the Bhutan Watch Human Rights Report 2025. The title itself speaks out very loud and clear that the pain and plight still persist among the Bhutanese population, especially with the Bhutanese refugees and the diaspora community, because of their no fault. I think the title is best suited in this particular context. Yes, talking about the report as such, and I would like to offer some points of appreciation, simply primarily because I can see the degree of a commitment and the volume of resilience in reporting despite a lot of setbacks, because the monitoring or fact finding with concerning the situation of human rights inside Bhutan is a Herculean task. It's not easy, and also because there is no freedom of press, freedom of information, and not civil society, which is kind of working with this free space inside. So, despite the such setbacks and extreme difficulties, and exceptionally under difficult circumstances, the report has showcased to me a relentless kind of a dedication in documenting human rights concerns in Bhutan. So once again the circumstances is quite challenging. Is unlike many other countries and situation. The situation of Bhutan and reporting is truly difficult. And also because, as highlighted in the report, that some of the key members, the brain powers working on the Bhutan Watch report, unfortunately, we have lost them. So this has also somehow, jeopardized the kind of meticulous presentation of the evidence-based documentation of the situation. But no, regardless of the situation, the report has come up with a total mirroring of the human rights situation inside Bhutan. To start with, I can see a very good coverage with regards to the political freedoms. The researchers who have been involved in this have provided a very structured kind of an analysis of political participation, especially, and the imprisonment of innocent people, the infringement of the civil liberties, as well as the still political prisoners, longing behind the bar inside Bhutan, and in their condition, which is pretty harsh, as you know. So this has been quite eloquently reflected in the report. And the other issue which has been very much on the spotlight in the report is the issue of statelessness and the citizenship, which has been the organic problem inside Bhutan, and it has remained the same for both the type of population, the population which has been evicted from Bhutan, and the other section of the population which is still inside the Bhutan, but not fully recognized their kind of statehood, citizenship, etc. So this has been nicely reflected in the report. So the other issue which has come out this time in a more kind of in a structured way is with regards to the problem of gender, like the gender inequality and the issue of discrimination, and including the violence being faced by the LGBTI community. I think this was not much highlighted and brought to spotlight in the past, and many of the reports, including the reports from the State Department earlier. But this time, the research team has shown some degree of courage in order to bring this issue into limelight. And of course, freedom of religions has been restricted. This has been always there. And now this time, the issue of labor rights and economic challenges have also been, I think, fully analyzed, including the issue of migration trends, as you have heard that, besides the Los Ambas communities who have been evicted from the country, but even those non-Los Ambas or the other, population inside Bhutan also seems to be fatigued with this system as such. So in search of better living options, people are leaving the country, most probably never to be returned. So that is something quite worrisome, and this has been appropriately highlighted in the report. And as Ramji already mentioned about the UPR report, yeah, of course, the report has meticulously examines the international commitments and responses, and it is so easy for everyone to understand and contextualize the global human rights standing of Bhutan. But in terms of recommendations and in terms of the concluding observation and etc., not only under UPR but also under other treaties has also been grossly neglected by Bhutan, which has been reflected in this report. So this time, this report seems to have gone a bit far in order to cover environmental issues and the question of climate change, because there are so many issues associated with climate change. It's a question of livelihood, economic, survival, and of course the issue of forced migration, because Bhutan is also part of the what we call Hindu-Kush Himalayas, because there have been incidences of heavy kind of and rapid snow melting, and adversely impacting the life and livelihoods of the people, particularly in South Asia, and Bhutan is not in isolation. So thank you very much for the research team that the crux of the problem with regards to environmental issues have been brought into limelight. And so besides the climate and the issue associated with migration, not only a general overseas contractual labor migration or skill migration or students migrating, but also I think it is very important in the days to come to focus more with regards to the climate change. That's what, because I'm working in this area for the last couple of years, and this has been one of the key issues of concern in our part of the world. Yes, the call for refugee repatriation and recognition has been always there since the day one. It's been almost 35 years that the human rights community, global human rights community, and the diaspora and the refugees themselves have been kind of advocating themselves or calling for international solidarity in order to respect the dignified repatriation and the recognition of their citizenship. So this has been, of course, there is no clear pathway to return at the moment, but the issue has remained alive, and the report has also kind of, unveiled and reiterated it quite nicely. So in some, the recommendations generally are actionable if the world community will take it seriously. If the host community here or the human rights community globally will take it seriously, as a matter of urgency, because it's not only right to return, it's a question of justice. It's a question of justice to those destitute to their destination. So this is very much well reflected in the report. Okay, talking about the structure of the report, there are some standard benchmarks in terms of undertaking any kind of research, or particularly of this kind of research. Yes, there is a general reflection and mirroring is very much there, and I truly appreciate the hard work entrenched in this particular report. But again, there are certain format. For example, we have been using called human rights documentations systems format called Heuridux format that makes the report more authentic because when we are reporting or doing some fact finding, we have perpetrator, we have victim, and we have the witnesses, and we have the other agencies intervening in that, and we have other details with regards to bring the report in a more evidence-based and more authentic way. So I would like to suggest the team to use Heuridux format as much as possible so that the report becomes more authenticated. And the other things which is somehow lacking in this report is the methodological section. There is a methodology, of course, but which is not dedicated one. For example, the standard reports often include a section detailing research methods, sources, data collection techniques, and then other elements to enhance credibility. I think I know that the problem, because all the reporting and everything is mostly done from outside, mostly through other secondary sources and others, because it's hard to visit the country inside, and it is hard to get the proper and convincing kind of information from inside because of the despotic regimes and surveillance going on inside. But again, let's try to do this in the days to come. The other kind of scope of work that I would like to suggest to the team is we need to focus more on the Bhutan's legal obligation, because when we are talking about human rights violation, it's not simply talking about Bhutan's negligence or Bhutan's kind of ignorance or Bhutan's kind of non-compliance, but how. So it is important to project what we call systematic analysis based on the international treaties obligation. Even if the Bhutan is not a state party, no worries, but there is a moral authority entrenched because Bhutan has been a part of several international other instruments, as well as is been part of the global community, in various forms. So it has a moral obligation and moral authority, to come to act in compliance with the international treaties. And yes, I'm happy with this little bit of coverage with the climate thing and environmental thing, but I believe in the days to come, a dedicated section has to be there in the report, because as you have seen and heard and read, that Bhutan has some strong environmental policies. What do you call the only organic country in South Asia, maybe even in comparison to other countries outside as well. But what about the human rights implication of climate change? What about the human rights implication of the so-called conservation policies? So how are you given value to the what do you call human rights based development? Is it kind of can we define and can we justify that when 1/5 of the population has been evicted from the country, and we are talking about environmental conservation instead of destruction of the human being and human rights? I think that there should be a correct balance, kind of striking between these two things, and which has to be very much part of the advocacy, and this should be part of the report. And often in the report, I would like to suggest and recommend that in the days to come, there should be some comparative analysis when we bring out this kind of report, because reports often compare human rights trends over multiple years, or at least with neighboring countries, in order to provide the context, why it is different, why there has been incidences of non-compliance, how the neighboring countries or other countries with, like for example, LDCs or newly emerged middle-income countries are behaving with regards to compliance with human rights, should also be reflected in order to put pressure on the regime. And I also like to suggest that in the report there should be some structural rectification to provide a kind of some emblematic cases, those cases which demands more spotlight, more highlight, and which is more palatable, evidence-based, with convincing explanation. That should be part of the report. Again, I like to stress that that should be what you call emblematic case studies on the report, and some important testimonies of survivor or the victims. If possible, some first-hand accounts of victims of human rights violation, because that would certainly strengthen the advocacy effort, because the primary objectives of bringing this report is to go for a systematic lobbying advocacy campaign for reform, right? So I think this should be part of that. And also, let's also try to focus on more digital rights now, because there's some discussion, but it's quite limited, because digital rights means we're talking about internet censorship, surveillance, online freedom infringement, and etc. So this should be covered in depth, because this is the world of information and communication and highway, So I think that should be very much integral and core part of the research, etc. And then Bhutan's judicial independence. How independent is the judiciary at all levels, starting from the local level, even informal setup, or formal setup, or semi-formal setup, or quasi-judicial thing. For example, I don't know what do they call, but here we call like CDO. In many countries they call magistrate, and maybe in Bhutan has got a different terminology for that. But how independent are they? What is the method of processing for justice-seeking process in terms of establishing judiciary's autonomy? That part and broader evaluation seems to be missing. I think we need to focus on that more in the days to come. And again, about the corporate accountability, because now we have already started talking about corporate social responsibility, business and human rights. So how the corporate sector, even though I believe it's a small scale or small time kind of corporate sector inside Bhutan, but in terms of their accountability, their responsibility to adhere with the labor rights, environmental impact, economic justice, and even the rights of migrants, etc., needs to be more highlighted. And based on this, two things I would like to suggest again, that let's bring out some structured kind of doable, workable, viable recommendation for international actors. For example, of course there are recommendations, but specific one like what would be the role of the bilateral agencies, the donor countries, the international non-governmental organizations, human rights community, the UN bodies such as Human Rights Council or the special rapporteurs and others. A separate one, more specific one, very smart kind of recommendations we can always think of. And let's also try to bring the voice, more voice of the diaspora perspectives. Yes, there are, of course, like for example, two of you gentlemen have been relentlessly working, on the issue of Bhutanese cause, the refugee cause, the human rights cause, and especially the cause of the political prisoners and prison situation. But let's try to bring more people, more voices of the diaspora community, because the Bhutanese diaspora is in a separate place. You can amplify your voice, and let's try to integrate those voices, and let's try to bring them on the same page. That is what I like to kind of suggest in the report. And of course, let's also talk about Bhutan has no national human rights institution, an official one. For example, most of the countries have got the commissions or other ombudsman, other kind of system mechanism in order to ensure the oversight and accountability. So let's also focus on that. And of course, Bhutan hasn't ratified many international human rights treaties. So let's also bring that on the limelight. And yes, I think that's all I want to say. And while I close, let's not forget about the issue of transitional justice. There's no time limit. Many countries have started the transitional justice process after decades of, I think, even after the failure, successive failure. Even in my own country, Nepal, we tried this for 2 consecutive times, one in 2015 and one in 2019. But because the commissions could not bring a desired results, in favor of the victims for varieties of reasons, including the laws and policies and the mindset of the political leadership. But now 2 commissions have been recently formed. So even after like 19, 20 years, things have started moving. So let's keep the candle burning of the transitional justice process, because there have been historical injustices committed by the regime, and Bhutan has not acknowledged or taken responsibility for past human rights violation, and particularly the mass expulsion of Losambas community. And now, as Ramji rightly mentioned, that this report has a time limitation up to 2024, but now things very, very kind of disappointing and very alarming things have started happening, particularly with regards to the deportation drive of the resettled Bhutanese refugees in the United States, for example. Those people are being deported in a country where they have no country, or they have been decitizenized, they have been denationalized, and they don't have a soil, they don't have a statehood. So, and then overnight, those people have been compulsively, probably Bhutan has welcomed them, but momentarily, less than 24 hours, they have been driven out of the country and rerouted, towards Nepal, from where they were resettled. So this is a big, big issue we have been advocating at the global scale. It has come out in most of the media outlets all over the world, but unfortunately the deportation still continues. So we are working really, really hard with regards to getting their testimony, and then also trying to knock the door in the U.S. administration that, hey, these people do not have a country. People you are deporting, they have no country because it is not receiving them. So stop deportation is one place, but at the same time, Bhutan's accountability, once it has welcomed them or accepted them as its own population, its own citizens, then it under no circumstances has a right, to drive them out of the country. So I think we also need to discuss this in a greater scale as a part of the global advocacy. And let's make the mockery of the gross national happiness. No one is happy. If the rest of the remaining population inside Bhutan would have been so happy, like people in the Paradise Garden, then there won't be 60,000 non-refugee Bhutanese in a city of Perth alone, and let alone other countries, and the number of both the brain power and muscle power, exodus from Bhutan. I think we are on the right side of the history. We are on the right side of the democratic movement. So let's continue with this, and let's continue, to bring the report, and because the Bhutan deserves naming and shaming in the global arena. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gopal, you touched on the deportation of Bhutanese from US and then denial of the Bhutan government to stay in that country while all initially accepting from the US government. I would just quickly wanted to check your experience in this front. What are the challenges, or how big is the challenge to hold the nations accountable for the human rights violations?
Well, particularly in this particular issue, or in general?
In general.
In general, yeah. Okay. Human rights is basically a moral authority, right? So like the UN system as such, or the international community cannot, go for a policing of the state. It's not easy. But of course there are some mechanisms. For example, International Criminal Court, the Rome Statute in the International Criminal Court. Even if you are not party to that, and if the human rights violation in a massive scale, the violation of international human rights and the humanitarian law persists in a massive scale, then the democratic sword is always on the head of the perpetrators. And so there are two ways. First of all, the state has an obligation. If you are party to the international human rights instruments, even if you are not party to the human rights instruments, you have a moral obligation, in some instances legal obligation. You are party to the international human rights instrument. That's one thing. So you need to demonstrate to the world community that, hey, we are complying with this kind of obligation and commitment that has been made so far before the international community. Being a member of the United Nations system, you have that obligation, and you can't shy away from that. Number one. Number two. And in order to, so to the international community, and also to render justice to the victims, you need to start some kind of oversight mechanism within the country, in order to, test the state's kind of, responsibility and accountability and its honesty and integrity towards its own population, which Bhutan hasn't done, but many countries have already started doing. Number three is that I'm talking about transitional justice mechanism needs to be started inside Bhutan, sooner than later. Number three, yes, there is a provision called what we call universal jurisdiction. If the crimes, human rights crimes committed inside the country are not addressed through a domestic kind of mechanism, or if there are no spaces to adjust the domestic avenues in terms of seeking redress, then if the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator travel to any countries where they have a law governing universal jurisdiction, these people can get arrested. So there are provisions, and there have been several cases in the past. So in order to avoid the universal jurisdiction, many countries have already undergone this kind of domestic justice seeking or redress mechanism. So if Bhutan doesn't want to do that, then the democrat sword, what you call universal jurisdiction, is always there. And again, the ICC jurisdiction, there has been an example, recent example, very fresh examples of the immediate past president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, was arrested from his land, his country, his airport, and he's been taken to Danhar, The Hague, where Ramzi is living, and so he's been in the custody of the International Criminal Court, right? So because he was not tried in the country, so the international community came up with this idea that because he was kind of accused of gross systematic violation of human rights, killing, maiming, torture, shooting. So you can't have a sound sleep unless you start some mechanism, to render justice. So it is my also plea to the government of Bhutan. Actually, they have to start something now. For example, they have to start releasing all these political prisoners. There's no point, and so it is taking people inside the prison, and the government doesn't know who they are. It doesn't recognize them as its own citizens, And who are they? Who are they actually? Whom are they detaining? Who are they arresting? And who are they imprisoning? They don't even have an answer for that, because the day they complete their jail term and they have been driven out of the country towards Nepal, redirected towards Nepal, and these are not our citizens, for example. These are not our citizens. They are not supposed to be coming here. Even if they complete the jail term, they should be kept. They should be allowed to live inside the country. So is with this the deportees, because Bhutan accepted them as its own citizens. They brought them all the way from the US up to Delhi on a different aircraft. From Delhi, it sent its own aircraft, its own people and pilot and officials to bring them up to Bhutan with the ICE officials. And next morning, not even 24 hours, they were driven out of the country. It's a mockery. It's a big mockery. So yes, government should take this into consideration, that these people have been doubly jeopardized in terms of their human rights and humanity. And at the same time, neighboring countries like India, how come India allowed them to cross the border 2 times? One Indo-Bhutan border in Phuncholing, Jaegaon, and second at the Kakarvita and Panitanki border. How do they cross the border? So India also has a responsibility, because there's seems to be a free, unchecked movement, and I believe there has been some kind of negotiations of some what you call quote unquote match fixing with the government of Bhutan. So those countries which are part of this kind of atrocities should behave responsibly, and of course respect the rights and dignity and the humanity of these people. That's all I want to say at the moment.
Okay, cool. We are almost closer to the time. I would quickly ask Ram Karki to give us his experience of lobbying in the UPR session, and then the process for following that, and then how the government or the government representative and reactions when he encountered during the sessions or prior to the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Indra. I'm really impressed by Dr. Gopal Krishna Sivakoti's perspective and his very useful advice to us. I know he's, since our day one of our cause, he has been consistently advocating for our cause. So we don't have any other more expert personality other than him. So it is really nice to hear your Amrit Bani, Dr. Gopal Krishna Sivakoti. Uh, I just like thoughts about ICC that you mentioned. I live in The Hague and I have been working consistently since 1990s for this cause. Uh, and I made a lot of inroads in ICC, in ICJ, in all the legal institutions that we have in my city. And with the advice of the Solicitor General, we wrote appeal like case, and in return we got up to 6 months that our case will not be taken because of two reasons. One is the Rome Statute was instituted in 2002, uh, out of which the ICC was formed, and they are mandated to take up the issue that has taken place after 2002. So our issue has occurred in 1990s, early 1990s. So it is out of their scope. And number two is Bhutan hasn't signed the Rome Statute as of now. So Bhutan, they doesn't have jurisdiction on Bhutan. But even then, they have taken this in the archives for in case in something changes in the future, we can always activate this matter. That is one thing. Another thing is like we have been working consistently for the release of political prisoners since many years, but since 2019, after we collected the data from the families, after we got mandate from the families to work, we have been working very, very consistently. And in the recent past, as Dr. Gopal Krishna Sivakoti is closely watching our activities, as I believe, we have been focusing whole energy towards Geneva, towards Human Rights Council, and we have made a huge inroads and there. In April 2024, we submitted our version of the UPR report, and then in August, we are invited to give our presentation on pre-UPR session. So I was present there, and from Bhutan government side, there was ambassador, the UN permanent representative to Geneva, and then there were two representations from Bhutan. Both the organizations were owned by the Queen Mother. One is Tarayana Foundation, and another is Renew. So in the panel, I was the only person from the refugee community, and the two of them are from the Queen Mother's organizations. And in the audience in the first bench was the ambassador of Bhutan. So during that time, I gave my presentation, and especially four issues, four recommendations I presented. One of them is unconditional release of political prisoners and their proper rehabilitation. Number two is constitution of independent human rights commission as per the Paris Principle. And number three is the dignified repatriation of willing Bhutanese refugees living in the refugee camps. And number four is issuing of tourist visa to the former Bhutanese refugees who hold the passport of the resettled countries to visit their families and parents. And number four is and number five is to give to reinstate the citizenship of those Losampas who are living stateless in the country. So these were the 4 or 5 major recommendations that we presented, and then there was a quick response from the ambassador. He was really angry with me. He was looking at me, and then that was it. And there was a reprisal, possibility of reprisal, and the UN Human Rights Council officials, they took some preventive measures for me. They didn't allow me to go out until all the Bhutanese delegations are left to the compound. And that was the one. And the second time was 6th of November 2024. There was a UPR on Bhutan, and a huge delegation from Bhutan under the leadership of Bien Dungel were present. And our delegation, the delegation from Global Campaign for the Release of Political Prisoners, were represented by our youths from America. I was not present there. It was led by CM Nirola, the GCRPPP coordinator for USA. So during that time, the Bien Dungel has given a very, very depressing depressing statement saying that these people, these are external vested interest people, their narratives of political prisoners is false. Those people who are in prison are criminals who are sentenced as per Bhutan's legal system, like they were done in other countries. So they are not political prisoners. And if the UN insisted on listening to these external forces, our bilateral relations might be sabotaged. So he gave a huge warning to the UN system, to the member countries, that not to entertain us anymore. Otherwise, the whole bilateral mechanism will be disturbed with Bhutan. So that was a huge warning. And then I was present in the last 24 of March 2025 during the official proclamation of the UPR, and there was the presentation from the ambassador with his team, and I was intervening on behalf of Asia Forum for Human Rights and Development for 2 minutes, and then after my presentation, the ambassador was very angry, and he told me, he straightly told us in his response that I am external vested interest person, and the political prisoners that I gave was a false narrative, and there is no ethnic discrimination in Bhutan. So that was his strong reaction. And that is, and like because of our because of our consistent advocacy in the even Geneva UPR session, the issue of political prisoners was recommended by several member states. And even in the 2019, the refugee repatriation was forgotten by member states. There was no recommendation at that time. There was a recommendation in 2009, 2011, 12, 13, but in 2019, everything was forgotten. But we brought it back in the States. And the France has given recommendation that the Bhutan has to repatriate those willing Bhutanese refugees living in the refugee camp. And it started bilateral talk with Nepal. And likewise, the refugee political prisoners was recommended, and many other things were recommended. So we brought all the issues in the international platform back at the moment. So, but the Bhutan rejected 68 recommendations. Out of 203 recommendations that was made by the member countries, the 68 of those which were specialized in the refugee issue, the political prisoners issue, in the ethnic minorities issue, discrimination issues, stateless issues, this and the other issues and the sensitive issues, they just neglected, they noted, they rejected those 68 recommendations. So it is quite frustrating, but we are still in the international stage now. We have already reached that level. So we will not turn back until all the issues are addressed. And other thing is, I also want to talk about the special procedure. As Indra is also in the team, that we have been working with the working group on arbitrary detention for very long. And we selected 3 cases out of 32 political prisoners because it was easy for us to contact, to get consent from, to get information from 3 families. So we selected 3 of them, and the working group on arbitrary detention started the procedure. They asked the government of Bhutan to respond them several times, giving enough time, but the Bhutan government declined. They ignored. See how the Bhutan treat people. They ignore, simply ignore. They consider those prisoners as non-human beings, and they ignored. And then finally, working group on arbitrary detention in the last November, they published their report, and it was they tell that Bhutan has blatantly violated all the international laws associated with that. And we also work with a special procedure on human rights and anti-terrorism. We also work with. We are now in the process of working with most disciplinary issues. So let's see what things will happen. Thank you very much, Indra.
Thank you, Ram Kaki, and thank you, Dr. Gopal Sivagudi, for your time. We are almost to the right time to finish, and we will continue to engage you all on our effort to improve the human rights situation in Bhutan and then have a dignified life for the Bhutanese people there and our right to visit our families and relatives there. Thank you again for your time, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
हजुर यति गरेपछि मैले युट्युबको